To begin installation on your K&N 632576 air intake kit, disconnect the negative battery cable and mass air sensor electrical connection. Unclip the wiring harness from the airbox and disconnect the filter minder electrical connection. Clip the band clamp that secures the crankcase breather hose to the intake tube. Then, disconnect the breather hose and fitting from the intake tube as shown. Loosen the hose clamp that secures the intake tube to the turbo inlet and unhook the warm air inlet tube from the firewall. Pull firmly on the complete airbox assembly and then remove the airbox and intake tube assembly from your vehicle. Install the provided edge trim onto the heat shield. Some cutting of the edge trim may be necessary. Install the tube mounting bracket onto the heat shield using the provided hardware and spacers. The spacers should be placed between the bracket and heat shield. Remove the 3 airbox mounting grommets from the mounting tray. Next, install the provided rubber mounted studs onto the heat shield mounting tray. The fender washers should be placed on either side of the mounting tray with the rubber washer in between each fender washer. Next, remove the battery tray mounting bolt. Keep the bolt on hand as it will be reused later. Install the heat shield assembly into position so that the rubber mounted studs protrude through the bottom of the heat shield. Secure the heat shield with the provided hardware and the factory battery tray bolt removed in the previous step. Now it's time to remove the filter minder and grommet from the factory air filter housing. Install the grommet and filter minder into the K&N intake tube. Next, install the crankcase grommet as well. Remove the mass air sensor from the factory air filter housing with the provided hardware. Install the provided gasket onto the K&N mass air sensor adapter. Install the mass air sensor into the K&N mass air sensor adapter and secure with the provided hardware. Next, install the mass air sensor assembly onto the K&N intake tube and secure it with the Allen screws provided. Install the silicone hose onto the K&N intake tube with the appropriate hose clamps. Install the K&N intake tube assembly into the heat shield and slide the silicone hose onto the turbo inlet. Secure the intake tube to the mounting bracket on the heat shield with the screws provided. Then position the silicone hose onto the turbo and secure it with a hose clamp. Insert the crankcase vent fitting into the grommet in the K&N intake tube. Use some spray lube on the grommet and fitting to ease the installation. Attach the filter minder extension harness provided into the factory harness and then connect the open end to the filter minder. Install the K&N air filter on the K&N intake tube and secure it with a hose clamp. Then, reconnect the mass air sensor electrical connection. Reconnect the vehicle's negative battery cable. Double check to make sure everything is tight and properly positioned before starting the vehicle. Review the instruction sheet to make sure all steps were followed. After 100 miles of driving, check the nuts and bolts and retighten if necessary.